Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're back to Ace of the Diamond, Season 2, Episode 28, 29, and 30. I got my notes ready. I am pretty excited about this, because why not have a game between each other, you know, right before the semifinals? Why not? The last of episodes I really liked. I loved Sawamura getting the shine. I loved him shutting Ochiai up. I loved Kataoka, like, just the feels of realizing that Sawamura and them are doing it for him. They want to get to nationals for him. They love him. It's like Miyuki fangirling. It's like, I'm all here for it. We get to see a little bit of Mei and Itsuki. It was a great time. I was really enjoying those episodes, but Kataoka, we're doing Battle of the Coaches here, as our Sith apprentice duo of Furuya and Ochiai go to the first string, and then the second string, which really, Kelsey on Patreon was talking about this. It's not really the second string. She said the translation was kind of weird. It's basically you have the bench warmers and Sawamura. And then, well, Kanemaru and Tojo are there too. They're not really bench warmers, but you have the bench warmers and, like, I think Tojo and Kanemaru are on the team with Sawamura. I think. Maybe not. Maybe it's not. Maybe Tojo and Kanemaru are with Furuya and them. I need to go back and see this again. I've forgotten where Tojo and Kanemaru were in all this. But anyway, you have what I assume are like the bench warmers and Sawamura versus, because they need a pitcher, versus Furuya and the first string. So, and the starters, basically. So, interesting. I feel like Kataoka is going to try to be creating an example, because Ochiai is very logical. Ochiai, we've established throughout this whole series, is a logical coach. He's like, whatever seems the most logical conclusion, that's what we're going to go with. Using Furuya for all 9 innings. He is a good pitcher. It seems logical. Sawamura doesn't seem like a logical choice. Zono and Haruichi don't seem like logical choices, but they've proven him wrong before. So I feel like Kataoka wanting to have this duel between each other, I feel like there's 2 parts to it. One, Kataoka wants Ochiai to see just how strong the starters are, especially when they have, you know, proper guidance. But also he wants Ochiai to see that with there is proper guidance, but with the right spirit and attitude, you can basically let anybody come together and form a pretty cohesive and decent team. I'm hoping that's the case. Now, is the second string, the bench warmers, going to be able to stand up against Miyuki and Haruichi and all them? Are we really doing Furuya versus Sawamura? So, it's going to be a blow to somebody's pride no matter what happens. And so that does make me a little bit nervous, especially going into the semifinals. Like, if Sawamura's team loses, is that going to be a blow to Sawamura going into the semifinal? Which I honestly think Nori is going to be the one pitching in the semifinal, if anything. I think he's going to get to shine in those episodes, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I don't know. I'm curious why Kataoka's doing this, and if it really is just a practice and just for funsies, or if there's an ulterior motive. I'm assuming the latter, but we've got to find out what that is. I've also noticed, pulling up the thumbnail, Ochiai's always on his phone. He's always, like, looking up something, which I've seen some baseball coaches from high school, and my friends played softball and baseball. I saw coaches doing the same thing, like looking up stats and stuff, so whatever. But I'm very curious to know what happens in these 3 episodes. So, with that being said, it's about to snow outside. I was like, what better fitting way to beat the snow than to watch some Ace of the Diamond? So, we're going to watch episodes 28, 29, and 30 of Season 2. And we are going to start those episodes here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Man, okay, so these 3 episodes were really good. I really enjoyed this. I find myself, I don't think there's been an episode of this series I haven't enjoyed. I don't think there has been, and that's pretty much a testament. We're like into the hundreds of episodes, and I haven't not enjoyed one. That's crazy. I've watched some sports anime where there's at least one filler episode. No, there's stuff to take out of all these episodes. Like, this series is just that good. It's just that good. But yeah, God, there's a lot going on. So, a lot. Episode 28, I actually had the least notes for, because I really enjoyed this set of episodes. God, I feel so bad about Kataoka. I get the vibe, though. I'm like, if Sakaki told him to come join me over at Yura, would Kataoka leave? I think he would. I think he would. I think he's setting himself up to leave. That's the thing. We'll talk about this. I think he's setting himself up to leave, right? I think that's the case. All right. So this whole game, this whole intra-squad game, doing the coach versus coach attitude, the players kind of try to reason out the reason why they had the game in the first place. And I think it is a combination of a lot of different things. I really think that seeing the attitudes of the two coaches and seeing the attitudes of the players, it makes sense that the first string won, obviously, but they were neck and neck. They were tied while Furuya and Sawamura were pitching. They were tied like 1-1. And then once it switched over to Nori and the other first-year pitcher, I don't know even who he was, once it switched over to them, then Nori just kind of wiped the floor and they just couldn't get any runs. The other guy, like the other pitcher, he let a lot of runs go. Makes sense, right? And Nori let a run go. So interesting, right? Very interesting. But so Sawamura, I like that we get Sawamura, our Sunshine Boy, like thinking and strategizing. I really like that because in a lot of Sunshine characters, and Sawamura is definitely a Sunshine character, but a lot of those like upbeat characters like that wouldn't really be strategizing like Sawamura, but Sawamura's thinking ahead. He's thinking of what he needs to do to make the pitches work. And I'm like, awesome, good. That's what you need to do. Great. Glad you're thinking about it. So I really like that. I like that he's thinking ahead about that. But Sawamura, I really liked him in these episodes because not only, we'll talk about this later on, but not only was he was in a positive attitude throughout everything, but then even talking with Furuya, we'll talk about that episode 30, talking with Furuya and helping him. I'm like, our patron saint, Sawamura, you cinnamon roll, you cinnamon bun child, I love you. It's like, my heart explodes for you. I love it. I love it so much. But man, so Ochiai, just bound and determined. Here's the thing, right? Ochiai has logical, good ideas. He does. Haruichi using the metal bat. Okay. Kuromochi batting left. Okay. Now, the Sawamura breaking ball, he takes credit for it, but he even admitted that he was trying to use that as a way to show that Sawamura was useless. So in that part, I'm like, you're slimy. But Ochiai has good ideas. He's so logical. He's very socially awkward, too. Like, when he sees Sakaki, he, like, straightens up his posture once he gets praised. But he's really kind of socially awkward. It's odd. It's very realistic, because there's socially awkward people like him in real life. But he's very odd. But he just comes across his advice in such a crass and cold way. And then later on when he's like, wow, Kachioka really knows how to make his team feel good, I'm like, that's kind of his jam, right? And I don't know. Ochiai, I didn't hate him in these episodes because he was spitting some truth. But at the same time, I'm like, Ochiai, you need to find that balance of emotionality and your logic. And right now you're so logic heavy that your team's just like, we don't know how to read you. And Kuromochi kind of like gets rebellious towards the end and Miyuki kind of has to simmer him down. So, but yeah, it was like the blow to Haruichi and Kuromochi's pride. Because we'll talk about this here later on shortly. But yeah, telling Haruichi he has to use the metal bat instead of the wooden one. And then Sawamura even saying, are you going to give up on me? Is this a sign you're giving up? Switching over to a metal bat? And it's like, But, okay, number 8, Kojima. Kojima looking up to Ryo. I love that moment. Kojima, like, showing... and it's been foreshadowed in several episodes prior to this that Kojima looks up to Ryo. Like, it's been foreshadowed. Like, he's been talking to Haruichi about it for a long time now. That he really admires Ryo and relates a lot to them because they are shorter statured guys. They're not the big, giant, husky men that Yuki and some of the other guys are. So... I love the idea that number 8, that old Kojima, looks up to Ryo and is trying to, like, not necessarily imitate him, but use him as inspiration. I really like that. Furuya. Furuya's big... The weakness between Sawamura and Furuya, it's interesting. Sawamura, I like that Nabe is like, your weakness is left batters. Like, you have a vivid weakness there, and we need to work on that. It's like, cool, Nabe is... Get the sniper. The old sniper Nabe is pointing things out. And Furuya's problem is that his early game is not good. Furuya needs time to warm up, right? Furuya, it's funny. It's kind of ironic because Furuya's from like a frigid climate, so he's okay with being cold. It's just when Furuya overheats, it's a problem. But ironically, he needs to warm up before he's good at pitching. So it's like, it's funny. It's a nice contrast. But yeah, his slider, getting to practice it. And Furuya's big thing is just brute force. Like just brute strength is Furuya's asset. Speed and brute strength. And Sawamura's is more like the change up and the strategy angle of it, which I like the contrast there. But yeah, I like Sawamura tells him not to be too greedy because Sawamura was told not to be too greedy, so he tries to pass that off to Furuya, which is funny. And then so we get the first idea of why they're having this game. And Miyuki reasons that it's for Kataoka to show Furuya that yes, you just learned the slider, but you're not going to be perfect at it right off the bat. You need to practice it and hone it. Like what he's told Sawamura to do. Practice and hone what you're good at. And so Furuya gets a taste of what it's like to try out a new move in an actual game. And Miyuki's like, okay, well, this was just to get the jitters and all that out of Furuya's system. That's one reason. And so then Miyuki makes the comment about technique being more valuable than emotion. And Ochiai notices that. And it's because Ochiai said early on that him and Miyuki would get along. I think to an extent. I think Miyuki's a troll, but he's not slimy. He's blunt and he likes to troll people, but he's not like a snake or slimy about it. So I feel like Miyuki and Ochiai do agree on some levels, but they're not quite on the same level, if that makes sense. But what Miyuki says does connect to Haruichi and Kuromochi in that you can have your pride and your emotionality. Like Kuromochi bats right because his model ideal hero in baseball bats right, but Miyuki's like, your emotion only gets you so far. You have to have the technique. And that's what Ochiai is trying to do with them, is to improve the technique so that they are the best they can possibly be. So in that regard, I can see why Miyuki and Ochiai kind of connect. It makes sense. It's interesting. Right? And Miyuki does have a good point. Sawamura is not cocky. He's not arrogant. But Miyuki's like, we need to keep Sawamura humble. He can't get too overconfident because then he'll flub in a game. And so him and Zono do a really good job of getting Sawamura to realize, okay, I can't slip up. I can't relax. I have to be on my guard. And I'm like, good. But Sawamura never gets flustered. He never gets scared. He powered through it. I was like, go Sunshine Boy. I was really proud of him. But yeah, Ochiai is very much a tough love coach. Ochiai doesn't, we'll talk about Kumakiri, the coach for Seiko. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But Ochiai kind of has the tough love vibe like Kumakiri, but he's not like violent or physical with it. He's very lazy physically, Ochiai is. He just sits there and he's like, yeah, just do what I tell you to do and it'll work. That's his style. And it's interesting. I like Sakaki says a breath of fresh air. I'm like, a breath of fresh air, you say? I mean, it'll be definitely different. Definitely different. But yeah, I like that when Furuya is using this brute force, Sawamura says he's good. Like, I do like in these 3 episodes, the way that the rivalry with Sawamura goes. I really like how it's portrayed in these 3 episodes. Because, yeah, they each acknowledge each other. And especially in episode 30. We'll talk about episode 30. But Sawamura, he hit the changeup. So it's like, he hit Furuya's ball, so okay. And then Yuki's brother Masashi, their eye colors are starkly different. They both have very distinct, vibrant eyes, but they're different colors. But they have the same, like, kind of stubby eyebrows. But yeah, so Masashi, he's huge. He's like a big, tall kid. But his whole thing is that he wants to give the team a good offensive player, which our team needs a good offensive player. We do. And I like that it sounded like from Rei's perspective that Masashi's like, I can be better than my brother. And so I want to go here and be as good of a batter or better than my brother was. And I'm like, okay. So he may be joining next year as a first year. Interesting. It'd be cool because then he could connect with Haruichi because they're brothers and their brothers have been on the team. So that would be really interesting. That'd be kind of cool. But yeah, and then making Kuromochi bat left, that whole deal. And then the other reason was revealed of why Kataoka had this game was because it gave Ochiai a chance to see the players perform under his tutelage and for him to communicate with the players. Like, it was a chance for him to speak one-on-one with the team, and it's like, So I think at this point, Kataoka had decided he wasn't going to leave no matter what, and Sakaki's words, but I think there's another meaning to Sakaki's words. We'll talk about that. But yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, and then Sakaki shows up. Teshin, old Teshin's coach. So, episode 29, Demon Child. This episode was really good. But we got some other things. We got to go and see, so Hosei University he was Kataoka's predecessor. He coached before him, which is very interesting. And then, as they're meeting Sakaki, Sawamura, and Miyuki has a moment where he realizes that Sawamura is solidifying his style, and he goes through like the motions of how Sawamura pitches. It's really cool. It's cool to see Miyuki analyzing Sawamura from an outsider's perspective because they're playing them. That was really neat. And saying that Sawamura is solidifying his style. Furuya still walks a lot of people, but he's getting good practice. So Furuya's thing too is that his early game, he walks a lot of people. That is something that Furuya does. And then, yeah, Nabe finding the weakness. I'm glad that Nabe noticed it early on, before they switched pitchers. But then, oh my god, the manager that said Kawakami's his favorite. It's confirmed. That part, I was like, oh my god, they just came out and said it. We've been joking about that for a whole season. And it's like, no, it's confirmed. Kawakami's manager he's a fanboy for Nori. He's Nori's fanboy. I love it. I absolutely love that. But the idea that Kataoka was a brat and always in trouble. I thought at first that he'd be more like Sawamura, but no, he was a lot worse. He was an actual delinquent. Like an actual Kuramochi-style delinquent. And was a brat and was always abrasive. He looked like he was 30 when he was 15. I'm like, dude, my dude. And he had Sawamura's tenacity, but he was kind of frigid like Furuya. So I can see why Kataoka sees himself in both Furuya and Sawamura, which is interesting. But he became the ace as a first year, like Furuya, which is interesting because he made Furuya the ace, and I'm guessing because Sawamura is different than Kataoka, that he wants Sawamura to work, because they established in this episode that Kataoka worked harder than anyone to get to the ace position. And that makes sense now, because back in episode 1 of this whole thing, Sawamura just showed up and was like, I'm going to become the ace. Like he hadn't even worked for it. He was just like, I'm going to show up and become the ace. Ha ha ha. And you'll just give it to me, right? And that's what pissed off Kataoka. And we see now, because Kataoka spent his first year running more than anyone, doing more than anyone, working harder than anyone to get to that spot. So, interesting. And then it shows how his attitude changed once he got the ace role, which is cool too. And so it said in his first year they got out, I think at the semifinals of the qualifiers, and then the second year they were runner-up at national, and then the third year they didn't make it to nationals his third year. Man, and then I love it. And it ties to that whole idea if he wanted to bring, he tells Sakaki that he is sad he failed him because he couldn't take his coach to nationals and make his coach known at the national level. And that ties into Sawamura saying that they're doing it all for him. Damn. Okay. It's crazy. And then, all right. So then we go back to him. He could have gone pro, but Kataoka wanted to stay at the school. So I guess they're establishing that back in the day, years ago, if you went pro, it was harder to get out once you were in. So Kataoka wanted to give back to the school that changed me for the better. And he said that at 17 years old. So he went to school for 2 years. So I think they said 2 years, so he's 19. And then he coached under Sakaki for 8 years. So he was 27. And then he's been coaching for 6 years. 6 years. So he's in his mid-30s. Kataoka's in his mid-30s. Which everybody calls him a green coach. I'm like, he's in his mid-30s. He ain't that green. And then, and then we get Nori pitching. And Miyuki's gleam in his eye, wanting to push Nori. I like it. And then Masashi saying he wants to surpass Yuki. I love it. So the A team wins 7-2. And after switching pitchers. And then, Ochi is just a little bit awkward meeting with Sakaki. I thought that Ochi was a little bit awkward. And then, interestingly enough, Sakaki was a college ball pitcher, but they talked about the slower pace of college ball versus high school, which I can see that. The way you all have described high school baseball in Japan, it seems like it's a much more frantic pace than college baseball, right? And then you have your professional leagues. But he's moving from college ball back to Ura Engineering School that is with Modiwara. My handwriting's awful. Modiwara. It's with another school that's been to nationals before. So Ura Engineering School. Merged with Shinagawa. Okay. So, and then at that moment, at the end of episode 29, there's this mirroring of Sakaki telling Kataoka not to run away and that he's taking on this position. But here's the thing. Sakaki made the comment during all this. He's like, I'm switching from college ball to high school ball for a change of pace, and I'm going to coach at Ura Engineering School. But he's like, I don't know for how long. So that led me to believe that he's going to offer Kataoka a position like assistant coaching with him, with the understanding that he's eventually going to leave and Kataoka will take over. Because it's in the same precinct. They said it's in the same region, so it won't be that far of a commute for Kataoka if he moved there. I'm just saying. So, and it's so sad because while this is all getting brought up, Miyuki's making a little spiel about, well, this is why we're doing this. We're going to go to nationals so that Kataoka won't quit. And then what happens in episode 30? Kataoka said he's not changing his mind and he's going to quit. It's like, ugh. So yeah. Episode 30, I kind of love this episode, mainly because Yakushi's in it, and we get Sawamura and Furuya actually getting along. But Yakushi, I kind of love their team. They're maybe, Inishiro's great, don't get me wrong. I love the antics of Mei and Harada and Itsuki and Carlos is running around nude. I love it, but I have to think that other than Sato, my favorite team may be Yakushi. If I ever got a baseball jersey, I would want it to be Raichi or Sanada's from Yakushi. I think that if I got a jersey from this show, I would want it to be a Yakushi jersey. Because I love how old Todoroki, he's sitting there, and the training with the colored balls is so cool. I love that. I love that they throw the 3 balls up and you have to hit the right color. And it's training them to just think in the moment and just hit whatever comes to them and not get super, don't get over focused on one ball. Just do in the moment what you got to do. That's really cool. I love that. And then we have Akiba and Mishima. Mishima. I love that. So Akiba and Mishima are going to be our batters. And then Sanada, old Sanada, he's a pitcher, but he's also becoming cleanup. He's getting the triple C. Well, no, he's not a catcher, but he's getting 2 of the C's, right? Cleanup and captain, probably, right? Kind of like Yuki. Very much like Yuki, but I like that with Sanada. Only he's a pitcher instead of Yuki was just a batter. But then I love that they're all practicing and having this group performance, and then off in the distance by himself is Raichi with just a fiery energy and a wooden bat, the money tree, just sitting there hacking away, laughing hysterically. I love Raichi so much. I love that feral child. But yeah, Coach Todoroki is he's correct. They've gotten a lot of data on Raichi, especially based on how they did in the last tournament. So he's wanting the other members of Yakushi to get just as good so they can face them. And they're saving that game for after Seiko versus Sato. I really was hoping we would get to see Ichidai third versus Yakushi, but we're not going to get that. We're going to have to wait till after Sato versus Seiko. I'm like, are you kidding me? Boo. That's just enough to amp up the tension just a bit, isn't it? It'd be funny if in the OP that it's Sato and Yakushi both lose and it's just Ichidai versus Seiko. It's like, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be Yakushi versus Sato. We just got to get there. Right? So yeah. And then we've got Kosei. Kosei is the new one that is for Ichidai. He's the new guy there, and he wants to face Yakushi and get revenge on Raichi taking out their former ace. I'm like, okay. And I love the flashback of him in the stands with the bleached hair, and he saw him lose, and that gave him the motivation to come back. That was really cool. He kind of has a Maki vibe to him, but not quite. Not quite. And then, so Sawamura being, and it makes sense now why Ochiai told Kuromochi to bat left-handed, and it did so well against Sawamura, because that's apparently Sawamura's weakness. And then, I'm sorry, but seeing Sawamura and Furuya with their little happy glow faces, taking Nabe's compliments and being like, yes. And then Nabe's like, because we're in the same grade, Nori, I'm going to be blunt with you. your pitching was not up to grade. And it's like, oh, I felt so bad for Nori. They're setting this up. As soon as they started talking about the batters for Seiko, as much as I want Sawamura to pitch in this semifinal game, I don't think it's going to happen. No. They've established too many times at this point that Sawamura is not a good choice to go up against these batters. Like, his pitching style is like the worst option just by how they bat. So it needs to be Furuya and then Nori. And I feel like they are setting up, like the comment with Nabe, as soon as Nabe said that, I was like, okay, they are setting Nori up for growth. They're setting Nori and his sinker up to take out Seiko. Like, Nori is going to be the closer, and he's going to like get his confidence back by taking him out. That's because Nori has struggled ever since the qualifier. Ever since going up against Inashiro, Nori has been struggling. And Furuya and Sawamura have been growing and getting better, and they've gotten over their loss, and Nori just doesn't seem to quite be there. And so I'm waiting for Nori's moment, and I think it's going to happen in this game. I think this game's going to be his moment. But yeah, Haruichi and Kuromochi adjusting to change. They talk about that. The third-year draft. I went back at the end of this episode, and I went back to see if any names were mentioned. But Sano from Seiho went to Chunichi. Taichi from Osaka went to Hiroshima. And Harada went to Hokkaido. Which Hokkaido was where... Was that where Sakaki was from? I can't remember. But Hokkaido, the big university... And then it said that Yuki went to a college. So Yuki got signed on somewhere that we know of. They mentioned Yuki getting signed on professionally at a college or going to a college team. But then Harada went to Hokkaido, which is where May's going to want to go now too. So be funny if they were like, we don't want you, May. Be funny. So then we have Sawamura. Yeah, Sawamura is not a good choice against Seiko, and so it's going to be down to Furuya and Nori, which, again, I'm fine with that. And the moment we saw Furuya's grandfather in the stands, I'm like, no, I want this moment for Furuya. Furuya didn't get to pitch for his grandfather. I want to have a Furuya happy moment and for his grandpa to see him pitch. I need that. So I'm glad that he's going to start the game out, and that's going to be that. Because I do like Furuya. I can't hate Furuya. And these episodes make me like their rivalry because they're still friends, right? They're just pushing each other further, right? So then we get to Seiko. And about Seiko's coach leaving instructions. Kumakiri leaving Oga in charge, and he was suspended for kicking a player in practice. And we see him after the game, and the whole tough love thing, like he is a very loud, abrasive coach. But he cares about his kids. And so it's hard because it's hard. My mother played basketball in high school, and she ended up coaching basketball for years. And she said her coach, when she was playing basketball, was when women first got to play basketball in high school. It was like one of the first few years they actually let women have a team. And their coach at the time, she remembered telling me that during games he would yell at them and he'd be like, oh, you're this and you're this. Now, granted, this was during the late 70s, early 80s when ladies were just getting to play basketball. And my mom said that his big phrase, he'd always call them jerk-offs. That's what he'd call them during games. He'd be like, all right, you bunch of jerk-offs, get over here. And my mother said that my grandmother was so offended and so like, how dare he call these ladies jerk-offs during a game? But my mom says that she's like, that was his like tough love. She's like, we all respected him because he was good. And he was like a professional basketball player that came back to coach, kind of like Kateoka. And so she was like, we respected him, and that was just part of his coaching style, and we were used to it. It was just, you accepted it. And that reminded me a lot of Kumakiri. Not the kicking part. Like, the kicking part is like his anger got the better of him, and he apologized for it. He was like, it's not excusable. I shouldn't have done it. So it's fine. I'm going to be suspended. It's okay. But like his style, it sounds like Oga and Masu, regardless of the third year that got kicked during practice, they still respect him as a coach because they're still doing his instructions, doing his routines. Like, they tell the reporters they're still doing everything that he told them to because they respect him. So I get it. After her story with that, I get that. I get why they would do it. I like Masu a lot. I really do. Oga is interesting. Oga, the first year pitcher, that's huge. But Masu, or Ogawa, they said his heart is frail. The coach said Ogawa's heart is frail and that Masu and Ogo have to help make him grow. I'm like, okay. I like Masu a lot. Masu being serious while these bunch of himbos are out there. I like it. I like him a lot as a catcher. He's pretty cool. Catchers and pitchers, they're maybe my favorite positions, right? It's kind of like setters in volleyball a little bit. I can't decide who would be the setter. Is it the pitcher or the catcher that would be more like the setter in volleyball? And who's more like the opposite? I guess it's apples and oranges. You can't really compare, right? It's interesting. But yeah, Seiko saying we chose to be here for our coach. We weren't forced to be here. We chose to do these routines. We chose to do these practices. Nobody made us. We just did it on our own volition. So yeah, and they're going to prove that his baseball is okay. They're going to prove that he's still deserving of respect. Interesting. And then we have Furuya and Sawamura having their moment. I love this. Sawamura teaching Furuya how he holds the balls and how he does his different style. Like this is the rivalry I love. And I hate that Miyuki thinks they're getting too chummy. Miyuki's being all like Ron Swanson, being like, it's getting too chummy around here, and trying to get them up against each other. It doesn't quite work, and I think Miyuki's half joking. But I love that Furuya and Sawamura, and Furuya opens up to Sawamura. Like, not totally. He keeps some of that to himself, some of his monologue to himself, but he opens up to Furuya. I'm like, or he opens up to Sawamura. I'm like, yes, Furuya, you frigid boy, communicating, like telling your fears to Sawamura. That Furuya thought he could take the ace position no problem, and then he's seeing that no, Sawamura is catching up with him, and that he has an actual definitive rival. And it's like, oh, I kind of love it. And even through all that, even though Sawamura is frustrated that he's not starting the game, Miyuki does put a little silver lining there. Miyuki does give him that little caveat. He's like, well, keep warmed up, because even if you don't play tomorrow, we're going to need you for the finals. And it's like, Miyuki, we see what you're doing. We see what you're doing. But yeah, Sawamura is still encouraging to him, even after all that. It's like, it's so sweet. I absolutely love their bond that is seemingly forming. I like it a lot. And then yeah, Kateoka told Rei he's not going to take back the resignation. He's going to go through with it. And they're going to let Ochiai be in charge. So I'm guessing that even if they win this, even if they go to nationals, they're not going to go to nationals with him. It's going to be with Ochiai. That's going to be interesting if that happens. That's going to be very interesting. And we are on episode 30 right now, and we're about to start the first game. And we still have semifinals. So theoretically, if they win semifinals, that would put us like episode 40, because usually the games are like 10 or 12 episodes for this series. So if they win, it could be like, by episode 40, we go into finals against Yakushi. And then the question is going to be, do we make it to nationals for season 2? For season 3, technically. I know they call it Act 2, but it could be season 3, technically. I'm like, so are we going to make it to nationals, or are we not? I don't know. Don't spoil me. Don't spoil me. But these 3 episodes were really, really good, and I really, really liked them. But now we're going up against Seiko, so I want Nori growth. I want Furuya to pitch. As much as I love our Sunshine Boy, Sawamura's had his 9 innings. He's done really good. He had a really good set of games in these episodes with the team and everything. But Sawamura can just sit out for the moment, rest his arm, get it ready for the final against Raichi, against Sonata. And meanwhile, I want to see Furuya pitch and his grandpa to be proud. And I want to see Nori grow and have a moment where he helps the team win. Those are the only 2 things I want. Everything else can just fall into place like it is, but I want those 2 things to happen, and I'll be satisfied in the next game. So I'm curious to know your thoughts down below, but these episodes were great. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with episodes 31, 32, and 33 of Ace of the Diamonds Season 2.